I want to talk some about a continuing story, and we talked about this last week and the week before, okay? And this deals with Vice President Joe Biden gave an apology yesterday, Saturday, July 6th in South Carolina, dealing with his comments about segregationists, working with segregationists, back when he was in the U.S. Senate. And this goes back to when he basically first joined the U.S. Senate. Now, nobody wanted to talk about the fact that the segregationists he was talking about were Dixiecrats, Southern segregationist Dixiecrats. I still don't know why people don't want to talk about this and put this in the proper context, right? So in Sumter, South Carolina, on Saturday, July 7th, Vice President Joe Biden offered a sweeping defense of his decades-long public record after weeks of direct criticism from his Democratic rivals, while also expressing regret for the first time for recent comments highlighting work with segregationists in the U.S. Senate. Now, in remarks to a heavily African-American audience, former Vice President Joe Biden at times offered an apology, an explanation, or in some cases, a determined defense for past policy positions and comments, primarily on issues of race, but also bankruptcy legislation and the 2002 Iraq War authorization. Acknowledging the increased willingness of his rivals to target his record, Biden responded with what he presented as the ultimate validation of his career: Barack Obama's selection of him as vice president. Biden said, quote, "I will take his judgment on my record, my character, and my ability to handle the job over anyone else's," end quote, Biden said to applause. Now, in that speech, because I saw different segments of that speech, this is in South Carolina, Biden talked about how it wasn't just President Obama who vetted his record in the Senate, his record period. It was also 10 attorneys, along with President Obama. Well, it was Senator Obama at the time. It was 10 attorneys, along with Senator Obama, who vetted his 30-year record in the Senate and other things as well, and chose him as vice president. And keep in mind, Senator Obama at the time was an attorney as well, okay, and a former constitutional law professor. Okay, so Biden went through a higher level of scrutiny than anybody else running, anybody else running for the presidency as far as the Democrats go. He went through, and most of them is because you have Governor Gary Weld, I think it is, Governor Gary Weld, former governor who ran as an independent for the vice presidency in 2016. Okay, he's come out. He's running for president also. So the scrutiny that Biden had to go through to be selected as vice president to run on that ticket was extremely high. Now, former Vice President Joe Biden told the audience that he first entered public service motivated by the civil rights movement and a desire to shift the Democratic Party in a more progressive direction. Now, you know, I've talked about the history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party, and it goes back to 1928 and Herbert Hoover and the Lily White movement initiated by the Republican Party to push African Americans out of the Republican Party, ignore our issues, and they implemented a Southern strategy in 1928 targeting 5 Southern states and luring Southern Democrats, Dixiecrats, from the Democratic Party to vote for Herbert Hoover as president, and that Southern strategy worked. So when little Candace Owens was testifying in front of the House committee talking about the rise of white supremacy and nationalism, and she lied and said a Southern strategy does not exist or did not exist, that's false. I have a 3-hour lecture that I have coming out. I'll have it with me in Chicago, Saturday, July 13th at the Black Agenda Tour. where I go deep into this history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. It all had to do with policies and who we could get the most from. That's what this was about. It wasn't because of the Civil Rights Act in 1964. By 1960, 2/3 of African Americans had already switched over to the Democratic Party. So when I hear people in the civil rights community saying we switched over because of the Civil Rights Act of 64 and the Voting Rights Act of 65, no, that's not true. This goes back decades before then. Okay? This is why you have to understand history. Okay, so Biden told the audience that he first entered public service motivated by the civil rights movement and the desire to shift the Democratic Party in a more progressive direction. He then took the fight into the U.S. Senate, he said, where he had no choice but to work alongside individuals whose views he found repugnant and offensive. See, once again, the whole way this thing is being covered is disingenuous. These were two Southern segregationist Democrats Biden was talking about. Nobody wants to say that. Read the article from Politico.com that I shared with you on last week's show. Okay? Biden's 2020 rivals condemn remarks about segregationists. I was watching MSNBC today. Richard Louis, MSNBC, David Gura. None of them said, and the guest didn't say, wait a second. He was talking to, none of them said he was talking about working with segregationists who were Democrats. And also, Senator James Eastland of Mississippi was the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Well, Biden was on the Senate Judiciary Committee. If you want to get anything done on the Senate Judiciary Committee, guess what? You got to work with the chairman, whether you like him or not, whether you find him repugnant or not. Either that or you're going to have to resign. So, in the article from Politico, he talked about Senator James Eastland of Mississippi and Senator Herman Talmadge of Georgia. He called Talmadge one of the meanest guys he ever knew, but, quote, at least there was some civility. We got things done. Once again, he's talking about even though you vehemently disagree with people, you can still get bills passed. Okay? And he compared that to today. So people took these things totally out of context. All right? And then Biden went on to talk about how he ran against these people and beat them as well. Now, let's continue. So read the article from Politico.com and read this and listen. Watch the video of the show from last week. It's on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. All right, check that out from our June 30th show. Now, okay, let's continue here. But Biden then acknowledged the misstep weeks ago at a Democratic fundraiser when he noted he had to work alongside segregationists when he first joined the Senate, but did so with civility. Quote, he said, now was I wrong a few weeks ago to somehow give the impression to people that I was praising those men who I successfully opposed time and time again? Yes, I was, he said. I regret it and I'm sorry for any of the pain or misconception that may have caused anybody, end quote. Now, there's a couple things here. One, people need to learn how to read better. Two, the media needs to cover this better and cover this with some integrity and tell the truth about what was being said. Now, last week I played the clip from June 23rd, 2019, when Reverend Al Sharpton interviewed Joe Biden, and Biden told him face to face exactly what was said and how he wasn't praising them. But then he went on to explain. He said, when I used the term boy, that didn't have anything to do with black men being called boy. That had to do with the fact that Senator James Eastland called Senator Ted Kennedy boy. He didn't call him senator because he didn't think he or I belonged in the U.S. Senate. They felt that we were too young to be in the Senate. So he said Senator James Eastland called me son. He didn't call me boy. He said Senator James Eastland called Ted Kennedy boy. Now this is on MSNBC. The video is on MSNBC as well. We shared it last week. So I don't understand how the hosts on MSNBC don't know this exists, and I do. The name of that video, Joe Biden responds to controversy over his comments about segregationists. This is from June 23rd, 2019. It's about 13 minutes long. Started at the 6-minute, 30-second mark. Start watching. It was Reverend Al Sharpton interviewed him. Okay? Then, once again, Sharpton interviewed Cedric Richmond, Representative Cedric Richmond from Louisiana, former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. and he is the co-chair of Joe Biden's campaign. He interviewed, Reverend Al Sharpton interviewed Cedric Richmond on Politics Nation, June 29, 2019. Okay? The name of that segment is called Biden-Sanders Surrogates Talk Candidates Debate Performance. I played some of that last week on the show. Sharpton acted like the interview he did with Biden the week before didn't even exist. He acted like he had amnesia. And then Cedric Richmond went through and broke down how the way the media is covering Biden's comments are totally mischaracterized. I'm not even going to jump on little Cory Booker. That little punk-ass Negro. I ain't going to jump on that. Cory Booker, after Biden apologized, he talked about how he's so relieved. Man, you want to talk about somebody who look like a weak punk. That doesn't even make sense. Once again, now, here's what, check this out. So I was watching MSNBC this past Tuesday, Craig Melvin, right? I like Craig Melvin, but Craig Melvin, he's weak sometimes in these interviews. He doesn't push back. So he asked Cory Booker about somebody else's campaign, about their stance dealing with climate change and things like this, right? Cory Booker said, well, I'm not here to comment on anybody else's campaign. Wait a second, you attacked Biden for 2 weeks on his stance, on his comments dealing with working with segregationists. You attacked him for 2 weeks, and then you attacked him. You were on one of the Sunday morning shows saying you're not sure if he's best qualified to deal with race, things like this. Talk about the issues of race. You did this for 2 weeks. Now, Craig Melvin asked you to comment on another Democrat's campaign, and you said, well, I'm not here to comment on anybody's campaign. Man, what the hell is going on? Let's go to this clip here. This is from Saturday, July 7th. See, I watch all this stuff. See, it's summertime. People ain't paying attention. I'm always paying attention. I do research 6 to 10 hours a day. I'm always paying attention. Okay, you can't slick a can of oil. All right, now let's go to this clip here. MSNBC, Saturday, July 6th. Biden apologizes about segregationist remarks. Let's go to this clip.
We got some breaking political news after weeks of saying he would not apologize for defending his record on race, including his remarks specifically here on working with segregationists. Joe Biden is now saying today he is sorry.
Now, was I wrong a few weeks ago to somehow give the impression to people that I was praising those men who I successfully opposed time and again? But yes, I was. I regret it. And I'm sorry for any of the pain or misconception they may have caused anybody.
All right, there you saw it. Let's go to NBC News political correspondent Mike Memley. We also like to call him NBC News Joe Biden correspondent here and there. Mike, why now? Why there? And how did he do?
Well, Richard, what we've seen in the past few weeks is Joe Biden as the front runner for the nomination really weighed down not just by those recent comments about segregationist senators at a fundraiser in New York a couple weeks ago, but really under the weight of the record that he had for 36 years as a United States Senator, a record that has become ripe for attack from his opponents in this race. And so what he tried to do today here before a heavily African-American audience was both to reframe his public career as somebody who began, as he said, entered public service to fight for civil rights, but also to explain sometimes, to defend sometimes, and yes, even apologize for some of those most controversial aspects of his career that people have been seizing on here. Let's take a listen to more of his effort to reframe this and put his larger career in public service into context.
Should that misstep define 50 years of my record for fighting for civil rights, racial justice in this country? I hope not. I don't think so. That just isn't an honest assessment of my record. And I'm going to let my record and my character stand for itself and not be distorted or smeared.
Now, what was interesting, what we also heard from the vice president was to say, listen, I know there's a lot of opposition researchers here, a lot of my rivals, a lot of my opponents trying to pick through my public record. But what he offered was the ultimate validation of his public service. He said, listen, when Barack Obama was considering who to name as his running mate, he and his team vetted every aspect of my record, every vote, every position, every comment he ever said. And let me read what he said. He said, I was vetted by him and selected by him. I will take his judgment of my record, my character, and my ability ability to handle the job over anyone else's. So it's really playing at this point in the campaign, when he's been on the defensive so much, that ultimate Trump card, if you will, the Obama card here in South Carolina, also attempting to pivot beyond it to say, listen, he understands that this is the game of this campaign, to pick apart each other's records, but he said this is more than a game. We have to defeat Donald Trump. Richard?
Wanting to move past that chapter, Mike Memley, there's a turn off the lights there at Sumter, South Carolina, after the Joe Biden event.
Yes, they did.
Okay. All right. So now, pay attention to what just happened. Now it's the entire clip. Richard Louis, neither Richard Louis nor Mike Memley, M-E-M-O-L-I, told you that the two segregationists that Biden was talking about working with were Democrats. That's the entire clip from MSNBC. None of them said that. And I see segment after segment after segment on MSNBC, and nobody's saying this. I see guests. I saw, who is it, Richard Louis today. I watched, what's the guy's name from Belize? Kendis. I watched Kendis. He looks African-American. He's actually from Belize, which is interesting. Joanne Reed, I like Joy, but her parents are from British Guyana and the Congo. I just find it interesting. I pay attention to certain things, right? Kendis Gibson is his name. He's from Belize. He's a brother. He looks African American, but he's actually from Belize. This is a whole nother conversation. We're not going to get into that. I watched David Gura this morning. I watched all of them. Nobody wants to say this. And then, if you go back and listen to the show from last week, Cedric Richmond, when he was interviewed by Reverend Al Sharpton on June 29, 2019 on Politics Nation, Cedric Richmond talked about how Senator Cory Booker and Senator Kamala Harris, they talk about how they got the First Step Act passed. Well, they had to work with Donald Trump to get it passed. They also had to work with Senator Mitch McConnell, Senate Majority Leader in the U.S. Senate, to get it passed. Because no bill can come to the Senate floor for a debate without approval from the Senate Majority Leader. No bill can come to the U.S. Senate floor for a vote without approval from the Senate Majority Leader. So they had to work with Senator Mitch McConnell and also other Republicans they can't stand. They had to work with Donald Trump to get the bill passed. I just find that interesting. We ain't talking about 50 years ago. We're talking about, what was that, earlier this year, late last year? All right, thanks for calling in. All right, everybody. We've got a few minutes left here in the show. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. I'm going to, we talked about Joe Biden, and I'm going to go to this other clip here as well. Then we'll try to squeeze in this Jimmy J.J. Walker story. I'll probably have to do a separate broadcast on Monday dealing with this. I'm getting ready to go to Chicago on Friday. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. PayPal.me/the AHN Show. You can donate there. That helps finance the research, finance the Sunday night show, helps me pay for these trips that I have to take to Chicago and Atlanta. Okay, I'm out of town 2 weekends in a row. PayPal.me/the AHN Show, and you can do 15, 25, 50, 100, whatever it is. You can set up for a recurring donation also if you like. And also, you can visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button. Be sure to register for my new online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. 2019 edition. We deal with thousands of years of history. We meet again Wednesday, July 10th, 2019. As soon as you register, you can watch the first 3 classes, and then there's about 36 hours of bonus content. Okay. All right. Going back to Joe Biden. We'll post a link here for the online courses here in the on the thread of the broadcast. Okay, going back to Joe Biden. Biden talked about working with the 2 Democratic segregationists, and nobody wants to tell you these were 2 Democrats. But Biden apologized on Saturday, July 7th. And, he should have apologized, but mainly he should hold the media accountable for misrepresenting what he said. Okay? Now, very quickly here, we see that Kamala Harris backtracked on her statements also dealing with busing. Okay, now Biden acknowledged the misstep weeks ago at a Democratic fundraising when he noted he had to work alongside segregationists when he first joined the Senate, but did so with civility. Okay, now he went on to say, but should the misstep define 50 years of my record for fighting for civil rights and racial justice in this country? I hope not. I don't think so. That just isn't an honest assessment of my record. I'm going to let my record and my character stand for itself and not be distorted or smeared. Okay? Check out the article from NBCnews.com. Biden apologizes for remarks on segregationists but defends civil rights record. Biden apologizes for remarks on segregationists but defends civil rights record. NBCnews.com. That's from July 6th. 2019. Now, Senator Kamala Harris had to she backtracked on her comments dealing with busing. The Associated Press reported on July 3rd. Harris says busing should be considered, not mandated. Harris says busing should be considered, not mandated. Imagine that. Well, what the hell was that you were talking about on the debate stage on Thursday, June 27th? The Associated Press reported from Iowa, West Des Moines, Iowa, on July 3rd, Senator Kamala Harris said Wednesday that busing students should be considered by school districts trying to desegregate their locations, not the federal mandate she appeared to support in pointedly criticizing rival Democratic presidential candidate Joe Biden last week. So, well, hold on. Now, I posted this article when it came out. First, I saw it from blackamericaweb.com. They picked it up from the Associated Press. I posted it on my Facebook fan page. Okay? And some people want to attack me over it. I'm like, why don't y'all read the damn article before you start commenting on the article? Then I read it directly from the Associated Press from their website. Senator Kamala Harris said Wednesday that busing students should be considered by school districts trying to desegregate their locations, not the federal mandate she appeared to support in pointedly criticizing Joe Biden. Harris had a breakthrough moment at the candidate's first debate. Okay, we know about that. She said, quote, that's where the federal government must step in, she said on the debate stage, looking at Joe Biden and winning a burst of applause from the auditorium in Miami. Now, I bet you these people haven't read this addendum, this asterisk, okay? On Wednesday, however, Senator Harris characterized busing as a choice local school districts have, not the responsibility of the federal government. Well, what the hell was that on stage? I told you that was an act. I told you last week. That was an act, okay? She should get an Academy Award for that. Busing, while not central to the Democratic primary, has become a proxy issue from the debate between Biden and Harris over race as well as a broader question, okay, about whether the 76-year-old former vice president is out of step with his party, okay? After a Democratic Party Wednesday in West Des Moines, Iowa, Harris was asked by reporters whether she supports federal mandated busing. Let's go to this clip here. We got a couple minutes. Let's go to this clip. Let you hear what she said.
Support federally mandated busing and for de facto.
I believe that any tool that is in the toolbox should be considered by a school district.
There's so much that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have to answer there around the question of school integration today. Kamala Harris said that school segregation may be worse today than it was even when she was a child going to school. And I think that's where those questions for both of the candidates go from here. Does that include federally mandating the busing in cases of what you could essentially call neo de jure segregation? I think those are the questions that both of the candidates will be looking at going forward. Chris?
Well, Hilliard, thanks to you as well as Mike. And joining me now is Democratic strategist Danielle Moody.
Stop there. Okay. Watch that full clip. And Danielle Moody Mills, she's the host of Woke AF. But you listen to her, that's an example when you too woke to study history. Watch the full clip, okay? I'm serious. Because I listen to some of these people who's supposed to know better and supposed to be so woke, and you can tell they don't understand history. You can listen to them and tell. She's one. I like her. And her wife is Aisha Moody Mills. So if you wonder why, you see them on MSNBC, okay? I'm not attacking them. This is the truth. There's a video on YouTube. They talk about this, right? If you wonder why they have the same name, this is because they're married to each other. They're not brother and sister. Not sister and sister. They're married to each other, okay? Not an attack. I'm just stating facts, all right? But, so they're supposed to be so woke. But you listen to them, you can tell they understand history. All right, so the name of that clip was, Let me give you the actual name of that clip here. What was that? Which one was that? Okay, the first one, that's from Stephanie Rule, MSNBC. Chris Jansen or Chris Jennings or someone was sitting there for Stephanie Rule. Considered and not mandated. Considered and not mandated. Senator Kamala Harris amends her busing stance. Okay, that's from Thursday, July 4th, 2019. Okay, check that out. And then read the article also from the Associated Press, okay, apnews.com. Harris says busing should be considered not mandated, all right? In that article, she said, quote, I think of busing as being in the toolbox of what is available and what can be used for the goal of desegregating American schools, she responded to the question. Asked to clarify whether she supports federally mandated busing, she replied, quote, I believe that any tool that is in the toolbox should be considered by a school district, end quote. She's backtracking on her statement on the debate stage on Thursday, June 27th, when she talked about federally mandated busing. The Biden campaign is saying, wait a second, you basically saying what Joe Biden was saying. So what was all that you were talking about on stage? I told you last week that was some BS. The more day after day, more information comes out to prove what I was saying, what I've been saying last week and the week before. More information come out proving I was correct. Proper documentation ends all conversation. Look, we got to get out of here. Make way for Pastor Mo. I'll see you all in Chicago Saturday, July 13th. See you in Atlanta Friday, July 19th through the 21st. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Sign up for our online courses, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, 2019 edition. Email me customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com if you have any questions, or if you registered for the course before, you get 50% off. You can donate to the African History Network, paypal.me/the AHN show. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now let's correct wrong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week. Peace.